Hello, welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be reviewing the Adventure Force Hypershot. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Adventure Force, it is not technically a manufacturing company in and of itself. It is a line for Walmart which rebrands products from other manufacturers. In this case, the Hypershot is actually a blaster manufactured by Zuru X-Shot, and it happens to be presented in this line. I believe the comparable product with the X-Shot branding is called the Kickback, although I'm not sure. Before I get too far into it, today's review is sponsored by American Foam. That's another YouTube channel, and I will provide a link below. This blaster was provided free of cost for review purposes. So, why don't we get this out of the package? Alright, so in the package you get one dart blaster and you get 8 Zuru X-Shot darts. Now, at a basic description, the Hypershot is a single-shot direct prime blaster. It is most directly comparable, and I will be making references to the Nerf Fire Strike, in my opinion. At the very least, the Fire Strike is relatively recently available on store shelves, if not currently. It is also a single-shot blaster, and as far as I can tell, these two holes on the Hypershot are intended to be for dart storage while you are on the go, and the Fire Strike also has that. Granted, the Fire Strike also has a laser light, but I'm going to ignore that for this time being. The Msrp, the retail price of the Hypershot on store shelves, is a meager $3.99 plus tax at your local Walmart. That is about as cheap as you can get for a blaster these days. One notable feature of the Hypershot, and it's more evident with the name Kickback, is when you pull the trigger, whether or not you are primed, you get a kind of a kickback action, like a recoil sort of thing. I can see that feature being handy for situations where maybe you're out of darts and either you're in a Nerf war and you want to maybe intimidate the other person, so instead of just dry firing, you go like this, you make a noise, and maybe they were expecting a dart, or maybe you're not even playing Nerf at the time and you just want to use this as a pretend firearm. So that feature in and of itself is pretty neat. I am a relatively large person, and one of the things that tends to give me gripes over time is the grip of a blaster. The recoil is kind of small. You can see here, even molded into the plastic, you really only have room for kind of 2 fingers. This last finger is going to fall by the wayside if your hands are sufficiently large. Compare that to the Fire Strike, and I can actually fit all 3 fingers on now. If the Fire Strike didn't have this extra kind of part here, my finger would not fit. It would kind of awkwardly slide off. I think that this is actually intended for when you're dual wielding, then you can hook one into the other and prime it that way. So it's actually kind of a nice feature for the Fire Strike. This blaster would be more difficult to dual wield. You'd basically have to, let's see, you'd have to use a spare finger over here to prime it. Now, that's not the worst thing. And honestly, I've tried to, let's see, I don't know if this is going to work with the Hypershot, but I don't actually really like how this hook grips onto a prime anyway, so I'm not likely to use that feature. I'm not really likely to dual wield these either. But what I like to see is features and innovation and thought put into different ways to utilize a product. So on the subject of a grip, I think I have to give it to a Fire Strike, but at the same time, this is eminently usable. Even though I can only fit 2 fingers on to grasp the handle, those 2 fingers are on there solidly, and it's not as though I'm going to drop the blaster. Now, for $3.99, you're probably not expecting much, so the best thing I think that we should do with this is give it some chronograph readings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use both the X-Shot darts that came with it, and some actual Nerf Elite darts, because figure many bins of darts at Nerf events are going to probably have a lot of Elites in them. As far as I know, the X-Shot darts are actually a bit lighter than Nerf Elites, so I expect them to have a higher reading, given that they're being launched with the same amount of energy. So here we go with the X-Shot darts. Now I gotta be honest with you, hopefully this will focus. The average of the shots was actually 83.8 feet per second. That is very high for something so small. For $4, getting over 80 feet a second is a remarkable feat. Now I would be remiss if I did not use darts comparable to what you might expect, so that's coming up now. Okay, so unfortunately I think the Nerf Elite darts were somewhat heavier. So on these ones, ignore the average for now because that includes the previous darts, but the spread of feet per second was from 68.5 to just under 73. So using comparable ammo, this doesn't have quite the advantage that we might have wanted. As I understand it, for a long time, Zuru actually has marketed their products as having something like the winner of some long ago long distance dart award from Blaster Hub. But I'll be honest with you, these darts, while they may have a higher initial velocity, they're no more accurate than Nerf darts, and I don't think I'd actually end up using any of these darts in my Nerf wars. And just for comparison's sake, let's also check the velocity of a fire strike to see how you're going to compare. Now the fire strike firing Nerf Elite darts actually did even much worse. I had one shot that approached 70 feet per second, but actually those were pretty garbage shots. I'll be honest, while I might utilize a modded fire strike in a Nerf war, I don't think I would really consider using a stock one unless perhaps that was the actual rule of the event. So why don't we wrap this up? To summarize, I think this is actually a really good buy. $4 plus tax, and you get a relatively powerful blaster in a small form factor. It is comfortable, even if the grip is undersized. It's easy enough to use, and I think we can ignore the dart storage, but that's not like that's a bad idea. If anything, I would say that for me, being an adult, the kickback feature of the blaster isn't something I care about or would ever want on a dart blaster, but it's at the same time, I think it's really neat that they put it in there. Well, that's about it for this installment. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.